Hi, I'm Debbie Hartner. I'm Elsie Johnson. We are two sisters, Southern cooking. I am making a butternut squash soup to go with our supper tonight. I've already got celery cut up, a couple regular white potatoes cut up, one medium onion diced up. I've got it over here to the side. I have two medium butternut squash. I peeled them, but I left the cutting up to kind of show you how I cut them up. They are pretty hard to cut up. They're a little easier if you do peel them. So basically what I do is I cut them in rings, and then I'll cut them in half, and then I'll take the seeds and stuff out of the middle of them. I am going to roast all these in olive oil on a pan, and with salt and pepper and olive oil until they're done. And then I will put them in my Dutch oven and puree it up and add in my other ingredients, which is like chicken broth and some other items as well. This is a really, really, really good soup. When you get down to the solid area on your squash, it's still a little difficult to cut in half, but I find that doing it in little rings, it makes it more manageable. I'm going to throw these cut pieces over on my other cutting board. You'll notice once you have them peeled and you have them in smaller pieces, they cut a lot easier. It also helps to have a fairly sharp knife, but not too sharp that you can accidentally hurt yourself. And most people should know this, but try to, other than my celery, which is a lot smaller, you should try to keep your, like your potatoes and your squash fairly consistently the same size so that they could cook in the same amount of time, so you don't end up with something being overdone and then the other still not being done.
Butternut squash is delicious.
It really is. I could just roast it and eat it as a side, just as roasted vegetable. It's so good. When you put it in the pot and it gets to cooking good, you can blend up some of it and cream it out. Anyway, when you go to put it in your Dutch oven, you will need to you can leave it a little chunky, because I liked it a little bit chunky when I made it the last time, but you can take an immersion blender, or you can take your food processor and you can throw, actually that's what I did, was take my food processor before I put them in the Dutch oven, and I blended up a few of them. You know, like I'd say about 3/4 of the squash. I pureed them down.
Now, can you do this with a blender as well?
Yeah, you can do it with a blender, immersion blender. You can do it with You can do it by hand too, but it's a little bit harder to do.
Yeah, I imagine, yeah.
And just blend them up, and then leave some of them to just kind of like mash with a mashed potato masher, so that they're a little chunky, but they're mashed up a little bit. And the texture is really, really good doing it that way. You leave a little bit of consistency, you know, a little
bit chunk in there, I guess. When does squash go out of season?
It's usually a winter squash, so it'll probably, I think it'll go right through spring.
Oh, cool.
So, and it's helpful that it is a winter squash, because you can do so many fall-like dishes or winter. So I'm gonna move it all over to my pan, along with my onion and my celery and potatoes. And you're gonna need to make sure, it might be easier to do that than what I'm doing right now, but this is the way I do it, so I like to do things the hard way. I just put it on the pan and stir it around and make sure that it has oil all over everything. But it might be easier if you put it in a bowl and just made sure it was coated with the olive oil. I'm pretty much down to, I probably should have used a little bit bigger baking pan, but that's okay. I'm just trying to get it roasted to the point that I can put it into the Dutch oven. It's not like I'm trying to get a crisp on them. And a little fact that you can not really tell from the camera is whenever I get celery, like fresh celery, typically you don't use a lot of that, you know, at one sitting. So I go ahead and prepare the whole head of celery. I chop it up in small pieces and I freeze it so that, like, this is frozen celery. I just pull it out and it thaws by the time you get it ready to use in whatever application you're using. I'm gonna stir this really good, and I'm making a mess because a bunch of them are trying to escape, but make sure every piece has olive oil all over it. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to put about a teaspoon of salt over it, and I'll stir it up when I'm done. And about a teaspoon of pepper as well. You can, we actually have a recipe that we're following, but I like a lot of pepper, so I don't even look at the recipe to see how much pepper. I just put what I like, which is a lot of pepper. Alright, now let's try and stir this a little bit again. As soon as this goes in the oven and starts to bake, you're gonna get the most wonderful, wonderful smell in your house. It smells delicious. Okay. Alright, this will go in the oven at 400 degrees for 25 minutes. If it's not quite done then yet, just put it back in for 5 to 10 minutes and see. I do like it to get a little bit brown on the top, But since I have so much in here of this in this smaller pan, I may not get that. It'll just get nice and soft and everything, so that'll be fine. But then we'll put it in the Dutch oven and get the soup portion going. And we'll be back when I get it out of the oven. I've got the roasted butternut squash, potatoes, onion, and celery out of the oven. So I'm gonna puree some of it for the soup, and I'm gonna leave some of it to just mash up a little bit where it's a little bit chunky in the soup. But I'm gonna puree a good portion of it. And then I have chicken broth to add in and some water. And then we let it simmer for like 8 to 10 minutes is all. Okay, I think that's good. And I'll mash up these in a minute. Just so you can hear me, I'll turn that off a second. I'm going to take and pour down in the mixer a little bit of the chicken broth so that it can try to puree a little easier. Yeah, that looks good. I'm going to take and I'm going to mash these a little bit so they break up their shape a little bit, but still stay kind of whole. Okay, all right, I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to bring my pot over. Take the lid off. All right, I'm going to pour this puree down in here. right now, but it'll thin down a little bit when I put the rest of the chicken broth in and the 2 cups of water. Stir this around real quick. Okay. Put in my rest of my potatoes, the squash, potatoes, and onion and celery mixture that I left a little chunky.
I'm Elsie.
And I'm Debbie.
We're Two Sisters Southern Cooking.
And we thank you for visiting our page. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Thank you.